It's just
Cool. Okay, well, thanks guys for chatting with us today. So the focus of this conversation is to help inform the next exhibition that we're working on here at the museum. And so, with in bonsai, we can see how there's like a distinct visual style difference between Chinese penjing and Japanese bonsai. I think you can also see that in other Asian countries like Taiwan or Korea or the Philippines. And so this idea of kind of uh, sort of a unique cultural expression through bonsai is something that we're sort of looking at, and not just how we can see that in Asia, but does that exist in other countries as well, in Europe and the US and et cetera. So I'm trying to talk to people who have an expertise in the specific countries that we're looking at. And obviously you guys, are US from the US, but you have such a unique perspective on China, and I'm trying to get people who have that information as well to kind of share that with me. And so that's kind of the goal. And this is going to then inform how we kind of can explain how what we see represented in Chinese penjing connects to Chinese cultural values, Chinese aesthetic values, things like that, to kind of help visitors when they come through point out some of these kind of broad brush stroke characteristics that would identify pinching and kind of help them see how that differs from at least from bonsai. Um, so does that sound good to you guys?
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
good.
Okay, great. Yeah, so I think just to kind of set the stage, Robert, can you just give us a little bit of your background and kind of how you got into bonsai and what you are currently doing, your garden? Just give us a little bit of history.
Well, my history of the bonsai is beginning in the early 80s when that time I went to the China, and China, there's a hotel in where we stay, and there's the bonsai display right there, and I fall in love with the style, how they work. And then in the same time, and China looking for uh, business to develop the bonsai to Europe. So, and that's how I started. Then we visiting the nursery, not nursery, actually private home to study what is the bonsai and punching, and just as in China at that time, no commercial bonsai punching nursery in that time. So I have to studying, and I'm pretty new in that time. Is not really quite understand what is the punching, but we start looking at the material, uh, like I even not recognize the Carmona, Saccharia, Chinese and still make a mistake because it's a mess up together. That's how we studied in early 80, like a 80, 83, 84, that time. That's how we studied.
And so was that so you're seeing Penjing in China for the first time? Was that your first time in China, or had you traveled there before?
Oh, I traveled there before. So because and the main we have a family right there, and we try to develop a business over there. But the bonsai is the one attractive and really nice art, and nobody in that time, nobody doing everybody doing the punching with just a personal
Mm.
collection that time.
Where in China was that at?
I start from
Okay.
Guangzhou area. Yeah,
Yeah.
which is the southern part of China, which is belong the tropical climate, and some material belong subtropical climate. That time is start in Guangzhou. Then we develop to study northern part of China, like Shanghai, which is pretty close to weather like a Seattle, not that cold. Then we find out another sources in Hangzhou, which is like 2 hours south from the Shanghai area. Right now, by the train, right now it's only 2 hours. That time we probably take uh, 4 to 5 hours from there, and the climate is quite different too. Shanghai, Hangzhou, Guangzhou. This is because we we travel always travel close to the ocean area, and that time we when we developed the bonsai, we want to introduce bonsai to the world. We need to get the harbor like Guangzhou that we ship to the we go through the Hong Kong to ship it out, and Shanghai they have a harbor right there too. We can ship directly from Shanghai. The Hangzhou they don't have a harbor right there. Everything have to go to Shanghai. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah. So you needed to have a port to export things. You mentioned that no one was doing penjing commercially in China, to your knowledge. So you were mostly seeing it in private collections.
Well, we this is the business a step by step that develop in that time. And my son Nolan's still young, of course, and I bring him to the nursery that time like a vacation. He run away in the nursery right there.
Yeah, I was catching frogs and slugs and who knows what I was doing with them.
Yeah. So and yeah, most of the activity in Guangzhou, and that's how we studied. And my teacher, actually, Peter Huang, and you meet him before. He's the famous bonsai punching artist in China and also in Europe too, Philippines, Indonesia. So I learned a lot from him. Actually, he's the one taught me how to grade the bond, punching and bonsai, and also develop to the commercial size. This is for education, and more people interested in than the punching that develop like that.
Hmm.
And I want to add to that because I was talking to this about my dad yesterday. Back in the 80s, when he started getting into it, you couldn't just go to a nursery or a store and buy a bonsai tree. It was still kind of reserved for like private. If you had a bonsai tree, you were kind of seen as, you know, wealthy, quote unquote.
And
Um,
this was in China. This
this
was
was
in.
in China, yeah.
Yes,
And like we, when my dad got introduced and he saw it at a hotel, and people didn't know where to buy it. So my dad knew that this art was it should be accessible to the public, like it, and that's why he started developing the commercial bonsai and try to make this art more accessible instead of so inclusive or so exclusive.
Hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. I mean, Robert, you kind of are, since you are in the business and you're working with both bonsai and penjing, how would you describe your own personal style? Do you lean more towards the Chinese aesthetic or bonsai aesthetic? How would you describe your own preferences?
of course. I've been travel a lot of different places, including the China. Even China have a different climate from the north, but I don't think the China on the north from the Shanghai has a lot of bonsai because that climate is quite different. So most likely, and I travel to the Shanghai, south from the Shanghai. That's a part of the style. And I was grew up in island, so I see a lot of water, ocean. So my style a lot of time is related with the wind, like a 30-mile, 40-mile per hour wind to try to bring in that the one belong to me to the tree. So, and when I get the material, always, looking at the tree, but that put in different angle to see if they can bring in some movement of the tree. That the style most likely I develop like that. And you come here. A lot of my art is not like a normal upright. I go to little bit, 25 miles, 30 mile per hour wind. Always try to grade it because that from my heart. But talking about the style is many, many, many different style in even in China, in Philippines, in Korea, Japan too. Is every climate is quite different style, and the tree material is different too, because southern part of China is a tropical. They can grow this way, and you go to Shanghai. I think it's pretty much same like in the Japanese style. They they have a juniper, pine, white pine, black pine, and garagana and maple tree. That's all in the Shanghai area. You go down the south of the China. There's no plant like what we have in beautiful like the plant what we have right here in Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, and that's part of this trend or part of the component that I'm hearing people talk about, and what we're also kind of exploring is this sort of the dual forces of culture, right? The cultural influences that people have experienced and where we grow up, as well as the environment as nature as a force. And so these kind of two forces that shape both trees, because you're speaking to like the environment and how different the plants are between northern and southern China. Um, that also allows you to have the different stylistic expression, right? So in the Lingnan school, the clip and grow style is largely a byproduct of the capability of the species to grow so quickly that they don't need wire. And then you generate this very angular branching style because it's so warm and the trees grow so fast. So there's this really strong connection between environment and how just plants grow. And that's part of what we're also sort of looking at, is just how the environment kind of shapes the trees, the environment shapes people, culture shapes people, people shape trees. It's this really kind of interesting relationship that we can kind of see playing out. And so I'm glad you're touching on that. And I think in what it sounds like you're saying is that just due to the size of China, right? It's such a large country. You have such a wide range of environments, a wide range of species that can grow, and therefore you have that really wide range of styles. I think China, uh, there's a lot of examples of styles that aren't practiced anywhere else, or maybe still even practiced in China. What is your experience of seeing kind of the diversity of styles within China? Can you speak a little bit to that?
The style in China is being developed a lot. Is quite different than early 80. Okay, so used to be and penjing. We follow the principle. We try not making any tree more than 1 meter tall. That's a principle. But right now, this already gone. So everybody can make it any size to focus in the beauty. And I've been travel there with the David Dicro and everybody. We've been discussing about this. And over there, when do the exhibition, they use the forklift to lifting up the big tree, and that's because the as tropical plant they grow faster than our climate right here. So they have the chance to develop that. Is that's their benefit because the weather on the northern part of China, it's hard to find the really huge big one. So they pretty much are still similar, like a 1 meter or 1 meter 50, which is like a 50 feet, 50, like 50 inches, that tall tree in northern part of China. So the style is being developed. No, used to be is the Lingnan style, like you say, clip and grow, and but right now they learn from also from the different area. Even they learn from the different country culture. They take it to what they can develop and mix together. But still, every climate is different. Every climate have different material. We need to upgrade the tree to level 1 to level 4 or even level 7. We upgrade the art of the tree. That's what they do, they try to doing. It's not necessary we have go to uh, pattern 1, pattern 2, pattern 3. So every artist is a free art. That's you can see that quite different in, especially when you go to exhibition in China. You can see many different style you can express. After looking at this one, this next one is completely different style because the climate, because the art is that been developed like that right now.
Do you think that can you speak to that a little bit more? Because I think that's something that's important, at least that I've noticed. It feels like Chinese culture, or maybe, and from what I can see in Penjing, values more of that individual expression of style, that there's not a kind of singular style, maybe more so like in Japanese bonsai, where there's kind of an established form and everyone's kind of doing much more subtle individual expressions. You can tell who's maybe styled the tree, but it's not as obvious. Whereas in China, it seems like there's much more encouragement or valuing of everybody maybe developing their own style? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, Nolan has been traveled with me to the nursery to meet many different artists. I think Nolan can explain it just a little bit. So,
Yeah, and even just talking to Mr. Huang, my dad's penjing teacher, he was saying that like in the small towns in like eastern China, where it's mostly a desert region, like northeast or northwestern side of it, there's still penjing techniques that has never been seen by the public. And like my dad was saying earlier, China has such a vast ecosystem. You go up north, it's a frozen tundra climate. You go to the east side, it's a temperate climate like we have here in the Pacific Northwest. You go to the south, it's a tropical. You go to the northwest, it's a complete desert. You go into central China, it's a mountainous region. Everything has to do with rocks. Um, so while like Japanese bonsai has this specific style and form principles, the climate of Japan is very similar. Whether you go to the north, you go to the south, trees are similar. So that's why they often have that one style that they stick with because that's the climate they're provided, and those are the trees they have the access to. Whereas if you take penjing, there's no there's no like principal rule for penjing. Like southern penjing is so different than northern Chinese penjing, so different than western Chinese penjing. And to your question is it really comes down to the Chinese culture in those regions and the environment they live in, and how did they when they make the trees in those regions, they oftentimes pull from what they see in the wild, right? Like I primarily grew up here in Pacific Northwest, so my style, because I go hiking, I summit mountains all the time, it's all my pieces are incorporated with rocks. And when I make them, my dad's like, why are you doing this way? This looks gross. It's like, let me do my thing. Like you didn't summit these mountains, you didn't go hike and go backpacking in the mountain. So his vision is so different from mine because of where we grew up. And Chinese penjing is the same. There's so many different styles of Chinese penjing, and it all comes down to the core of where the artist originated and what trees they have access to.
and no
Mhm.
way you can making the northern part of China plant bring it down to the Guangzhou area and you develop that plant in Guangzhou. The plant probably going to damage because the climate is different. Same like Pacific Northwest right here, our plant right here. If you bring in the wrong climate, we are probably going to damage the plant too. So you go to south of the China, punching style is different than the northern part of China.
Hmm. So you're really saying that the environment is the primary reason for the variation you're seeing. Do you, in other, I guess, moving away from maybe pinching as the direct example because of the environment influencing the material, if you look at other Chinese art, like landscape painting or these other sort of long-standing arts in China, like what can you guys speak to kind of the artists, the culture of artistry in China and just kind of like, are there any values or any priorities or how from your perspective what is that kind of how does that feed into pinjing from your perspective?
Can you restate the question one more time?
Yeah, so I'm trying to see like the role of the environment is obvious in the different styles of pinjing in the country, right? And so I'm trying to though understand like, and I don't want to try to lead you to where I think it should go, but I'm really curious how there seems to be from an outsider perspective a valuing within Chinese art in this sort of unique individualism. Like there seems to be yeah, an idea of like individuality kind of being valued in art in China. And I'm sort of trying to prove or disprove that. I'm just trying to get a sense of what you guys think of the culture of China as encouraging individuality in artistic expression, or is it more trying to have a homogenous or consistent type of practice?
Okay, I think I know how to answer this one. Yes, individuality is important, and I think the what at least what I've learned from my dad and what my dad has learned from his teacher is to don't copy another person's tree. Like if you take a tree and you say, "Oh, I'm going to make this look like Mr. Miyagi's tree," it is never going to happen. That's why like there's no like distinct style of like Chinese penjing. Yes, there are techniques. Yes, there are things that are found beautiful. But if like my dad was saying, if you go to the BCI convention that's in China, you look at the trees, they're so they're so different. Like not everybody uses the same techniques. Um, how do I answer this?
But there's a style, and like Nolan just mentioned in the BCI, when I go there looking at the tree, immediately I can see, oh, this is from the southern part of China. It's all close to Lingnan style. And you can see the style, oh, this is from the northern part of China. It's very clear that part is two different lines. So because northern part China is similar like you see in even in Japan or Korean, there's the style is close like that. And but
Mhm.
southern part of China, you can see you immediately see the difference, and you feel it is because the tropical. So that's why when they exhibit in the BCI convention, the climate have to be in between their climate. So
Mhm.
otherwise, it's very hard.
And
Yeah.
and I think to add to that is I like to think Chinese penjing isn't like bound by a set of rules, whereas Japanese bonsai it's so they're so well disciplined, like they're well structured. It looks like a tree wearing a tuxedo. It's so well manicured. Everything is measured proportionally, and that's kind of the style that's been set. And when you study Japanese bonsai, all the style kind of ends up looking the same. Gin here, deadwood here, dramatic form, uh, like the Fibonacci style, all that is there. Whereas Chinese penjing is they try to mimic what they see in the wild, and it looks more free, and that's why there's no like distinct style, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, I think so. How do you attribute that to any sort of cultural connections within Chinese cultural values? Is that something that you can see playing out in other aspects of Chinese culture? This that sort of encouragement for freedom of expression or creativity or not replicating something, like what other, is there any other things that kind of speak to Chinese people as a value that could kind of be tied to those differences? Because we can see in Japan that, that following of tradition or that mastery of something to take it to such a high level where it's where they've kind of achieved almost an idealized form. Whereas, I think in other countries, there's, in the US, we kind of value individuality and don't tell me what to do, kind of that DIY type culture. Like, is there anything that you could kind of point to from a Chinese cultural perspective that could explain why that is the case in China?
So I feeling because we just started the business early 80. That time in China is the economy is quite different than what we have right now. So Penjing is related with the economy. Okay, related how much money you can spend and how much time you can spend. It's not necessary you need to have the money, but that time there's a nice punching. People go to the mountain to collect the tree, playing right there. But right now you can buy the better tool. You have the transportation. You can easier to collect the tree from anywhere. The one used to be is difficult. That kind of develop is a lot. I see it much different than early 80 right now. So the quality of the tree right now, it's much better than early 80. But the principle, the love of the band punching is still same. The philosophy, the spirit is still same. What I believe all the artists is focused on how to upgrade the tree from really tall tree and bring it down, use the material, grade it as best as possible. So there's a word as often in China, just my teacher say is find what you love, but you have to love what you find. Okay, you not just bring in the tree and chop, 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 chop. You need to study the tree. You need to love what you find. That's the whole thing you need to focus. It's not buying the tree material and just without singing and chop it up. You love that tree, find what you love, but you have to love what you find. That's love what you find. That's a long-term maintenance. It's not like 1 week, 2 week, 2 years. A lot of the art is belong to artists. They don't want to transfer to someone.
And you talked about how like Chinese culture and values, how that shows up in the penjing world, and you touch how like in U.S. culture it's more about individuality, freedom of expression, and Chinese value is more like holding on to this tradition of the family. It's similar to Japan, but when you think of like the business side of the Chinese culture often pushes the envelope like so intense, right? Like me going back to China this past spring versus China 10 years ago, it's a 50-60 year gap jump in technology.
Mhm.
And it's the same principle with Chinese penjing, right? If you take that concept of pushing the pushing the envelope to the next level, Chinese penjing, what it is now compared to 10 years ago, also jumped 50-60 years. And I think that's one of the unique things with art in China. They're not often bound by rules. They use the rules as a foundation, but
Mhm.
they're often challenge themselves to see what's outside this line. Okay, let's make this box a little bit bigger. Now, what's outside that? Like, there's the growth is limitless, and
Yeah, I mean that has a very Western feeling to it. You know, there's sort of a almost again an American similarity to American culture of always trying to improve. Like there's a foundation, but there's not like a this sort of social expectation to like stay in your lane or kind of always just kind of continue as you've always done. It's a tradition's a framework to build off of, but the goal is to build off of it, not to sort of perpetuate it.
but the interesting with that is like I feel like art is limitless, but family values and lifestyle, those often, and I don't want to speak for the entire culture of China, right?
Right.
But
That's yeah. But
yeah, I
your
feel
perspective for sure.
yeah, I feel like the family values and stuff like that tends to stay the same, whereas art, technology, business that supersedes and grows at a much higher rate
Mm.
than family values.
Well, same like you've been in Pacific Bonsai Museum for many years. You can see this last couple of years, you've been developed, bringing a lot of different culture to museum, to let people understand how to develop this art. You did a good job for that part.
Thank you. Yeah, well, we're just doing our part, right? We're all trying to get more people to appreciate these trees. And I think you mentioned going to the BCI convention in China and being able to tell regionally where trees are from. Do you think you could do that in other countries if you went to the Nolanders Trophy, the European show? Do you think you could see a tree and know like, oh, that tree came from Spain or that tree came from Germany or that tree came from Italy? Like, do you think that type of nuance exists?
Well, the show or the exhibition in every country is related with the plant what they have. Okay, so like in Italy, the crispy bonsai, there's a big bonsai museum right there. They basically is a collect from the wall. They can display right there for the different culture. And when they do the exhibition, they always invited the different artists to come to do the demo during the show. And Europe is not that quite wide climate different. So basically, is they're limited is different than in China, because
Mhm.
China from the north and the south, that's big climate different right there. So you will probably see different kind of style more than the other country. especially like a tropical area. As I went to the Indonesia, the Asia Pacific Bonsai Convention right there, you cannot bring any pine tree from the north climate like a China. There's a pine tree in the southern part of the in Indonesia area, but it's different than the what the plant from the other climate. And the style, some people like the style follow, like more we call Japanese principle style. Some people like the just the tropical. Then they follow the own. They always follow their own style. Of course, they're taking the advance of the what the other style. So you will see the difference. But the climate is, I think, only in China you can see more variety of the different style at the one show. At the one show, yeah.
Do you think that obviously Japan has been a major influence in bonsai style in the West, right? Most Western countries, Europe, the Americas, sort of follow bonsai as a style guide. In Asia, though, where we're talking about Korea and Taiwan and the Philippines, I think it's less so, and I'm curious to know where do you think China's styling is more impactful? Like in what countries does penjing style kind of be the main reference point as opposed to bonsai in the West? Are there other countries that come to mind, like in Taiwan or the Philippines? Like those countries tend to have more trees that look like penjing than bonsai. What countries do you think that's true for?
Uh,
Can I answer this?
yes.
Yeah. That is a great question. And I think to what you're saying, China and Taiwan penjing are so alike because even today there's not a lot of Chinese penjing books that's been translated into English that's accessible to the world. You go to China, you pick up a penjing book. It's just a picture of the tree, the artist, how old it is, where it's from, and that's it. There's no technique, there's no principles, and I think it was like the first English published bonsai book was in like 1951 or something like that, written by a Japanese bonsai artist and an Italian bonsai artist, and that's kind of how it got introduced to the world. And like you were saying, like the Western English speaking countries learn from the Japanese principles because they the Chinese penjing principles were not accessible, and even to this day, it's not accessible.
Mhm.
And I think that's why China and Taiwan is so similar because they use the same language. So you can learn from a Chinese artist. And there are some Chinese books that are available, but not translated into English yet.
Mhm. So the lack of information is kind of the main reason that you see the limited influence of pinging on the West. I do think
Yeah.
that's changing. I think there's as more people kind of, I mean, I remember at one point in time, I would speak to someone in DC because we had the National Bonsai and Penjing Museum to where it was part of the collection, and so Penjing was almost like a bad word. People would say Penjing kind of like they had a bad taste in their mouth or something like that. It's been long viewed within the U.S. as kind of not as high standards or not as the same quality as bonsai, but I think as in the US, that's changing. That perception is changing, and I think more people are becoming interested in pinging stylistically. I know I personally find it more visually interesting to look at. I think largely due to the kind of creative freedom that's allowed. But yeah, I'm curious to kind of hear what your thoughts are on about how pinging might be or not might be spreading into Western countries.
I can answer it too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think you nailed it right on the head, right? How a lot of people think Chinese penjing is like a Chinese knockoff of Japanese bonsai, when realistically, the art originated in China as penjing, introduced to Japan, right? And I think part of this attitude stems from a little bit of pride and stubbornness because you learn a technique, you learn the Japanese technique, and like they perceive that as like the highest of the value. And we often hear horror stories of like Chinese knockoff Temu and things like that. While like that is true, there are some bad practices of uh, like Chinese products. But to say Chinese penjing is a cheap knockoff of Japan, I think that is just wrong, and I'm glad to see that it's starting to change worldwide. There's a lot of work that still needs to be done to shift that mentality change, and that's one of the reasons why we did our YouTube channel, is because we felt that resistance. Even when my dad started a business here, there were bonsai artists that came in and said that we're selling knockoffs and these aren't bonsais and that we shouldn't be here. And like as a kid, I was naive to that experience. I didn't know, I didn't care. But as I got older, I recognize this. I don't know if it's racism per se, but this resistance of accepting Chinese culture, and
Mm,
we wanted to introduce more Chinese penjing via our YouTube channel, because YouTube is more of a global audience, right? And we often get criticized on our channel saying like, "Oh, why are you pruning this way? That's not the Japanese way." It's like, you're right, it's not the Japanese way. This is a Chinese tropical tree. This is the penjing way. And
right.
it's just it's an endless tough conversation, but it needs to be done, unfortunately.
Mhm,
But overall, I'm glad to see this shift, and I think it really comes down to Chinese pinjing information isn't accessible in English format, and I think that's the breaking point. And they feel like, oh, it's not available in English, that means it's a Chinese knockoff. Not true.
mhm. Wow, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, it makes sense to hear it from your perspective, and I think that's the vibe I've always gotten. But to hear, not being Chinese myself, it hits a little bit differently hearing it expressed that way from you. I think, yeah, that's part of the goal of this too, is to highlight the similarities, right? That bonsai and pinjing, this art form is practiced globally.
Oh yeah.
And there to be like the goal is to kind of help visitors understand why trees look differently in different countries, and because we all have different values, we have different environments, we have different experiences, and so while they're similar, they're also really different. And so there's this kind of valuing of the differences, but then also coming back to like understanding that we're all trying to like we all like doing this practice, for the same reasons, right? So there's like a similarity, but there's also differences in that. And so trying to help people understand what distinguishes Penjing in China from Korean or Taiwanese bonsai, and try to look at these cultures. And so, I mean, in your other travels, I don't know if you guys have made it to Taiwan or Korea, but like, are there any other stylistic differences that you see that are unique to those countries other than Japan and China? Like, do they have certain things you see? You're like, oh, that's from that tree's from Korea, or that tree's from Taiwan. Like anything that kind of jumps out at you that might you could kind of point to as an example of that?
Yeah, you went to
Yeah.
Chichu Island.
I went to the Chichu Island 2019 with David Grow, and that's a really really great bonsai garden is a huge one. They did really really good job
And Chichu Island's in Korea.
in the
Mhm,
Korea. Yeah, I just only like you take a plane from Seoul. It's only like a 25 minute. That's a really really great and garden, really organized, and all display is really nice. And but you can see the plant from Korea is a lot of time is a red pine. So
mhm,
the structure is really nice. They can grow the tree training similar like a Lingnan style, but
mhm,
not quite same because the climate different. But you can see the freedom of the tree that develop. That's really nice. And I've been to Indonesia bonsai convention over there. That the one is close to Lingnan style because tropical climate. And of course, the people there too, they learn from the technique from Japanese style too. So we be mixed combination. The culture right there is quite different. Of course, like I say, plant material different, climate different, They will grow differently. The art value is different, but the all is we respect the artist what they do. You know,
Mm.
Europe country, uh, pretty much the earlier they import is from Japan, and they've been developed a lot of Japanese culture and the role how to develop the tree. So you can see a lot of Japanese tree culture right there. Even they import from China, but most likely they import the commercial size. We've been in export to Europe for more than early from early 80 to 90. Even right now, they're still imported the commercial size bonsai. So that how much it can influence the art of the bonsai is a quite different because commercial side bonsai is a different than the bonsai art is kind of just different. Yeah.
Do you have any questions for them?
Yeah, I had a question. I loved what you talked about in the beginning when you explained the windswept preference that you had. And I was curious if you had a certain species that you were favored in your creations that you liked to work with. Either of you, Robert or Nolan.
You go first.
Well, the style, I have to see the tree. Okay, my job is upgrade the tree to
No,
great.
she's asking, what do you have a species that you like? You said yesterday Chinese elm, right?
Chinese own probably one's easier, easy to get the material. We can develop the different, even the cascade, even the windswept, and many style we can create it because the structure of Chinese is quite open. Yeah, that material I love working with the Chinese and we do have a lot of material. Of course, that's a part of the reason too.
Mhm.
I personally also like Chinese elm because I've really tried to absorb the Lingnan clip and grow method, and I've been training several Chinese elms for the past 2 3 years, no wires, and just seeing the dramatic angles that clip and grow can do, and I really like that. Also, I'm lazy. I hate using wire; it just takes forever. Um, but Chinese elm is so easily trainable. You can do the rock fusion technique, the root over rock. You can do cascade. You can do formal upright, windswept. There's so many different styles you can take and apply it to the Chinese elm. And when I think like, is there a species that can draw from every single bonsai technique of the world? I think Chinese elm is the right species for that.
Is there any, what is the cultural significance of the Chinese elm? I mean, is there anything that is of note for that? I know certain trees kind of mean certain things or have the kind of symbolism associated with it. Is that true for the Chinese elm at all, culturally?
Chinese elms, they always represent the tree more spirit, from the root system, from the trunk, from the way they develop the structure, is the one close to natural view. That's why a lot of people love that because when you create something penjing or bonsai, you always have the pattern what you've been living with. That's why people say like Pacific Northwest, we like a pine tree, right? Because we see that pine tree everywhere right here, or azalea or maple tree, especially the color. The artists will be loved with what the background they have, but the Chinese elm is the one pretty much everywhere people when they see that the pattern of the tree, the structure always top more than other people they feel it's easier to get it. If people never been in Pacific Northwest, you created the tree like that from the other country like a tropical area, they probably not cling them that much stronger than like a Chinese elm. Yeah, Chinese elm, that's why Chinese elm I think is the one good material.
Yeah, so it has like, okay, sorry, Nolan.
I just want to add to that story because we think of like the bougainvillea, for example. Dan Robinson has a beautiful bougainvillea that he brings to the Northwest Flower Garden Show every year, and it draws so much attention. People take pictures of it, but if you go to the tropical climate, like in southern China, bougainvillea is like garbage. Like it's used as just side butt brush. It's kind of like it's considered like a shrub, and they use it in the middle of the highway, on the side of the road. But here, because we don't see bougainvillea very often, is seen as such a beautiful plant. So like from an outsider's perspective, like my dad was saying, like if you take a pine tree, bring it to the tropics, they're like, what is this tree? Like this doesn't look good, right? Because they just don't have the experience with it.
Yes, the Chinese elm's really versatile. It sounds like it has that kind of broad appeal, which all makes sense. Do you have any other questions, Sarah, while I'm reviewing what we've gone over?
Well, you both have such interesting perspectives because you have gone back and forth from the 80s to China. I'm curious, because of your travels, if you think that climate change has played into perspective on the growing developments on the bonsai and penjing art over the years, because of the ever shifting, globalization of the changes that we've seen. If you have anything to say or any thoughts around how the art has changed, and if how our climate has warmed up, if there's been any thoughts around what you've seen in China and the trees and how they've changed, if there's been any correlation there in your minds.
Not much change in my experience. That because the climate is even, I didn't see any different. Even right now, I go there, is the climate the same? Shanghai a little bit. They have a spring, summer, fall, and winter. Guangzhou basically is a spring, summer, and back to spring like that. And not much different.
And
Yeah.
like with tropical trees, they can tolerate heat so much better. So like with climate change, earth warming up, it doesn't affect the southern part of Chinese penjing as much. Whereas like here in the Pacific Northwest, we're seeing more diseases, more fungus, aphids, insects.
Right.
Just a couple years ago, there was this bad fungus in the Pacific Northwest. We lost 75 junipers in a matter of weeks. And like even during the heat dome we had, like the Ryan Neal in Oregon lost a really beautiful pine that was part of a forest. So even like the best of the best artists can't fight climate change when it comes to bonsai. We just don't see it much in the tropics because the plants are more resistant to it.
See.
Are you seeing the kind of this idea of global styles? Do you see styles becoming more distinctive, like over time, or do you see that due to our ability to kind of see what people are doing around the world now, do you feel like styles are becoming more like what's the word, homogeneous or homogeneous? They're all kind of becoming more similar, or are they becoming more distinct?
Like I say, is really dependent on the climate. Really dependent on the climate. What area you grow, and the style is the principle of the bonsai is what called principle is the beauty of the tree. I call that the principle. So how to create your tree as beauty as possible. When you display your tree, people will stay longer looking at the tree instead just go through. That's the difference. So it doesn't matter. Style is a free style. I accept all the culture, not going to block, the box it. This is the only style. I believe is really dependent on the climate, where you stay. If we Pacific Northwest, we have to respect our plant, we have to respect our climate, and we have to respect how the artists in Pacific Northwest create the best punching or bonsai in Pacific Northwest right here. You go to the south of the California, they have more option. You go to the different country, it's different option. I don't think would be, if you close to the area, what the Pacific Northwest they look like, you can see what they look like, and you can see people like a triangle shape, the principle like that. And because they've taken the lighting condition in Seattle, we have right now always rain. We don't have enough light right here, so you have created the plant is open up a little bit, get the plant have light more. But if you open up too much, you go to the like Colorado or other place, they maybe get the sunburn that will be damage the plant. That's how I looking at the tree right now.
Yeah, and I also agree that there shouldn't be like a global one style of bonsai. Like when people close their eyes, think bonsai. Right now, majority of the people probably think, "Oh, Mr. Miyagi's tree," but that's just like 1% of all the styles out there, right?
Mhm.
And I think in the world of art, it's important to be inclusive of all cultures. And when people think of bonsai and they're only boxed in by one, like that's being exclusive. When you're like, I feel like art you need to absorb from all cultures, and
Mhm.
like my dad was saying, each culture is different. There's probably styles in Africa that we've never seen, and doesn't mean that it's bad bonsai. It's just we're not familiar with it. We may not like it, and that's okay. Like the best of the best bonsai still receive criticism. Doesn't mean it's bad.
Mhm. Do you, for your guys' own work, do you reference, like, where do you find your inspiration when you're, I mean, obviously we're talking about, you're hiking and the native environment around us is a source of inspiration. Robert, you're talking about the windswept trees, but when you're also like paying attention to what else is happening globally, are you primarily looking at China as your main source for interest of what styles and forms are there, or where else do you kind of derive your inspiration from?
Well, I've been grow up in that area before. I come from Hong Kong, so that kind of memory, that's a part of them what I prefer, because that the one give me education was the beauty of the tree, you know. So I've been here this for many years, 30 years. Then this thing is mixed together with Pacific Northwest.
Mhm.
Now my experience is probably different than if people only live in Pacific Northwest or people only live in Asia. So I have both right here. Is that I have my own experience by looking at the art. Then that's what I'm feeling.
For me, it's literally go outside. That's my inspiration, and I do a lot of landscape photography. So I study my photos a lot, and we're fortunate to be here in the Pacific Northwest because you go 2 hours east is a desert climate. You go 2 hours north is a it's like you hit Canada. You get a lot of snow, forests, big trees. You drive, 2 hours west, you get the ocean. You get all the windswept stuff. Um, so there's so many different variations I can draw from here in the Pacific Northwest. And
Mhm.
anytime we travel, I always study and look at the landscape and I take pictures. I don't always study the tree live there, but I always go through my camera roll and look at the pictures and see, why does this tree move this way? Why are the roots like this? Um, so I that's why my trees are so different than my dad's, because he doesn't do a lot of backpacking or hiking here, whereas I have. So it's important to be. I think a good bonsai artist is a well-traveled person.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, I think, as you're talking about the observing the land, and I mean that's really the main theme that I've been hearing from you guys is how strongly that connection is to the environment, which I totally agree with. One thing I'm curious that maybe you could speak to, and as we sort of wrap up, is what and again, one of the challenges people have had is they feel like they're speaking for their entire culture or whatever. And so the goal is to try to have a few voices from these cultures to kind of help round that out. So that feeling is not unique to you, but as best you can, what would you describe the Chinese the Chinese cultural relationship is to their environment? And as an example, I've spoken to a few people from Australia, and they have this unique relationship with the land, the environment of Australia. Having sort of come, their history is, they come from like convicts. Originally English convicts were sent to Australia, and so they sort of there's this kind of tension with how Anglican Australians view Australian land and plants as kind of like it's not theirs, because like England was their home, and like they're trying to like go back to that, or cultivate like English species in Australia. So there's kind of this love-hate relationship that exists. And so I'm just curious, like from a Chinese perspective, what is the relationship with the land or the environment culturally?
Well, a lot of artists they get the because tree is from Mother Nature, the art, and a lot of that idea is come from the when they travel outside the city. In if you travel to Asia, you can see quite different city, and outside the city is a two different view. So if you city, you see the all concrete building. That's the in city. So and the tree is more natural looking. So a lot of idea is more copying to get the spirit from the when you travel mountain like a Nolan been hiking, can see the if you go to the ocean, you can see that a lot of artists they get idea like that, especially the Chinese painting, right? A lot of the time they're not painting the concrete building. They're painting a lot of them is related with the water, mountain, stepstone, and the tree. That's all three of them: mountain, water, and land. There's the three thing is the spirit of the penjing.
Hmm. Hmm.
And I would agree with that, and that's why penjing is it speaks to me more because it feels like a photograph, like a 3D photograph for me to recreate what we see in nature and put it in a pot, and it's a living art.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
for me culturally, um, it's kind of capturing the essence of my life experience in a pot.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great place to wrap up. One last component tied to that is I've always noticed that in Chinese landscape painting and in penjing, you mentioned the sort of the mountain, the water, the tree, like these sort of elements of nature. One thing that's at least jumped out to me is that man or people are always also represented in there. There's usually like a little boat or a bridge or even just a person standing there observing it, right? Whereas I think in Japanese culture, there's kind of that minimized. They kind of put nature as the main, like through Shinto, this kind of deification of nature. Nature is the ultimate kind of source for perfection, and man's kind of like polluted or not quite a good force for it. Whereas I think in China, at least there's some acknowledgement that human beings are part of that system. I guess can you speak to that just a little bit? What are your thoughts on that?
Uh, in the big show, the percentages people use the like a mudman or figuring, not that heavy percentages at this moment.
Mm.
Used to be, as people always put like mud figurine, on there. But right now in the international show, people not using that for a lot of art. I didn't see that.
Mhm.
Only maybe less than 10% of the art in the show people using that, especially a lot of time when they're doing the tall tree, they always using the mud figuring or statues on the side to spot the art how they look like this, like this feel like really tall or
Mhm.
really deep like an ocean, or you want to see the water, let people have the strong feeling for the water, they put the fisherman right there. But there's a many things, even not fishermen. Sometimes they put the dry wood, like a cutting the pieces of the log right there, making like a bridge right there, just bringing to like I always tell my friend or my customer say, Home Depot not going to bring the concrete, build the bridge on there. That's how
Mhm.
they explain it. Everything have to be natural, look related with the art what you created right there. So
Mhm.
rock is always suggesting, people always are not suggesting of always people using the rock to make the land is not even, only the flat. They put the rock to balance up the element of the balance with the whole tree. That's what I see, that there's still rock is more popular than other.
Mhm.
Yeah. For me, the Mudmen, if it doesn't tell a story or add to the overall piece, then Like don't force it, right? Like I think mudmens are great. It adds to the scale of the tree. And like take I think his name is Ed, who comes to Bonsai Fest as his mame collection. I vividly remember he has this small tree growing out of R2D2. Like I think that's so fun, right? Like as long as it adds to the story, then I think mudmen are highly valuable. And plus it's a dying art now, unfortunately. Like when we went back to the spring, the factory's gone. Nobody wanted to pick up the art. So what's out there is kind of what's out there.
Still,
Yeah,
the tree is very important. The
Yeah.
art of the tree, that's the first one. And,
sure.
and the container. The
Mhm.
container with the tree, that the whole thing is related. And so many good container. Nice tree, you need five the nice container. And especially sometimes we special order for the container to match the tree. Wait for years or 2 years, and sometimes we get the tree, we get the container, we keep it in the inventory, and try to find the tree, then can combine with what we have. That's that's what tree and container. That's still the spirit right there.
Yeah. Any other questions?
No.
Anything you guys wanted to ask us, or anything popped in your minds that you wanted to share that I didn't ask, or any ideas as we kind of wrap up?
I did see you trying to release this in about 2016. Is it going to be like a video montage?
2026.
2026.
Sorry,
Sorry.
I knew what you meant.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Yeah, so the plan, again, this is like just my research building, and then a few options we might explore. We might release these collection of interviews kind of in their entirety. We might utilize the conversation for the audio, for maybe for like an audio tour. I might pull quotes from our conversation and use in print. But essentially, we're going to have an exhibition here in the museum, our next major exhibition. And so I'm looking to take multiple sections of the museum and present these distinct countries, so China, Japan, etc., and talk about kind of what these larger cultural values, like how can we look at these distinctive expressions of bonsai and penjing and try to help tease out what may be behind them, both from the environment, the landscape, which is a huge component that we've talked about today, as well as the cultural values of those countries, and see if we can kind of, point to a few things that we can kind of say, oh, this comes from here or that comes from there, and for people to kind of get a sense for that. And so the goal is to kind of have that throughout the museum as you go through. You'll be following the way that bonsai has traveled through the world. So we would start in China as that kind of origin country for the practice, and then go through, Korea and Taiwan as it kind of moves to over history into Japan and then out to the West. So there'll be kind of individual, each alcove will sort of be representing a different country.
Well, the all conversation today, and because our background a little bit different, and especially we do a lot of commercial bonsai. So the idea what we do is mix right there, and we would like to do the basic education program. We do a bonsai class right here, and the way we talk in the class probably is that we try to find the easy the key to turn on more people get involved with the bonsai, then this culture will be developed. So if we don't want to give them more difficult, and selected very fancy tree to like that, we just go basic one. Even we supply the very basic material for the school district too. We want to give them education, let the kid get interest in the future. This will be the one how they can develop the bonsai in United States. That's very important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Have you two had the opportunity to visit China at all?
No.
Nope.
Let me know.
Yeah, we go back every year for business. So like if you want to align,
Yeah, it's definitely on the bucket list. So I'm thankfully going to get to go to Japan in February for the 100th Kokufu 10. But yeah, I think in the future, my next big bucket list trip would be to go to China, because yeah, I've never been, and yeah, you definitely are at the top of my mind for who would help me make that happen or coordinate introductions or whatever. when that time comes. When do you guys normally go back there, out of curiosity?
April.
April.
Mhm.
April. It is my slow season in the business,
Mhm.
and that's the one. Between April to June, that's the best climate. They not rain, it's no typhoon. It's just travel must stay because we have to plan ahead, and you never know when the typhoon coming, right? Not
Mhm.
not get the serious, but we try to. Most likely, April is most safe our time to travel there. Instead, you get the umbrella, go to the bonsai nursery. That's is really hard, and really hard. But
Yeah,
if you need any help in the travel to China, because I have more relationship to from the south to the north, so
yeah.
you see directly the artists, even go their home to see what they do right there. I'm more than happy to provide the information.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I know they just had a big convention in China a few weeks ago, I think, correct? That was the big one. So yeah, I think somehow connected to that, if there's, I don't know what the next large convention is going to be. I know that China has them fairly regularly. So yeah, if there's any interest in, like, I know they will bring professionals from outside of the country to those events too. So if you're ever in a position to suggest that, I would be interested in doing some sort of professional travel or presentation demoing in the country to kind of help offset that too. So anyway, just throwing that out there as well.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Great. Well, thanks guys for taking your time to chat. And if anything pops in your head, between now and the end of the year or something, and you're like, oh, I want to tell Aaron that, let me know. Just email me or something like that, and we'll keep you in the loop as we continue to work on this exhibition. And it'll open for Bonsai Fest weekend will be our opening weekend. So Mother's Day weekend in May, our big weekend, will be when this exhibition will be debuting. But yeah, we'll keep you in the loop as we move along.
It was a real delight to speak with people.
Yeah, if you need any like video clips and stuff, because I filmed a lot of content when I went back this spring.
Yeah.
Just shoot us an
Yeah,
email.
that'd be great.
I think we would probably for our guide. We have an online guide, so even if it was just to utilize for that, I know that we would probably benefit from some of the guide, because I know that we would want from different countries, the photos. I know you've been collecting photos, right?
Yeah, that was what I was going to say, is the things you guys, I'm asking everybody that we're interviewing to give me a picture, at least one or two, of what you think represents the cultural bonsai that we're talking about. And I know you guys are Chinese American, so I think you could speak to both of that. But I also, because I have such limited access to China, you guys came to mind as kind of being experts in that. So if you have like a photo of what you think kind of embodies penjing, Chinese penjing in your mind, that would be helpful, because obviously we have trees here that we can draw upon, but for a lot of European countries we don't. And so we are going to rely on photos from an artist's perspective of like, oh, this tree is kind of looks like a German bonsai or Spanish bonsai. So if you guys have an idea, a photo of a tree that you think really encapsulates Chinese penjing, that would be really helpful too.
Okay. It doesn't have to be a tree from our collection.
It can be whatever you want. Yeah, it could be your own tree. It could be someone else's tree. It's just your ideal. Like, what is your idea when you think of Chinese penjing? Like, what tree is like, oh, that's it. That's the one that I would point to as an example. So yeah, it could be whatever you want. It could be any. Yeah.
Okay.
Sounds good.
All right. Thank
Yeah.
you guys so much. We appreciate
Thank
it.
you. Thank you. Have a
All
good day.
right. Bye.
Bye.
They're so sweet.